The story goes that one Sunday morning, a public sinner stood outside the front door of the church, but the religious leaders, concerned with protecting the purity of the church, refused his entrance, and he was devastated. And he took his woes to God. He said, "Lord, they won't let me in because I'm a sinner." And God replied, "What are you complaining about? They won't let me in either." We're looking at Jesus' I am statements this Lent. We're looking at how they help us understand who God is and how they shape us as children of God and as followers of Jesus. In the first week, we looked at his statement, "I am the light of the world." And we remembered that we too are called to shine the light on injustice wherever and whenever we see it and find it. Last week, Pastor Penny preached on the bread of life and reminded us that we are called to be bread for others, to be a life-giving, life-sustaining presence in the communities that we're called to serve. This week, we're looking at Jesus' statement, "I am the gate," or "I am the door." Now, the Greek here is closer to door, but most translators use the word gate because you don't want to let sheep indoors, but you do want to let them in the gate. And this image is surrounded by all these sheep and shepherds, and so many people settle on gate. But I want to focus on door because I suspect most of us have come through a door today, but not many of us have walked through a gate. So I invite you today to think about the doors in your life. Doors play a significant role in our lives. And today you have encountered many doors, I suspect. You encountered your bedroom door, your bathroom door, your closet door. Maybe you went down into the kitchen, you opened the refrigerator door or the cabinet door. You have encountered some doors today. And for those of us in person, you came through some doors, but before that, you opened a car door probably. You might have opened a garage door, and here you are today. And after you leave today, I suspect you're going to go through some other doors. But even for those of you worshiping online, you too have gone through some doors. You may not think of it that way, but you turned on your computer, which opened you to something that wasn't there before you hit the power button. You found the Westsite web page, perhaps. You clicked on live stream and were led through a door. Or maybe you were on our YouTube channel and you found today's worship service. You clicked on it, and here you are. And for all of us in worship, we will be led through a series of doors because Reformed worship is set up in a very consistent way no matter what worship service you go. The first part of a service is the preparation, when we prepare to move through the door to encounter the word of Christ proclaimed, where we hear the word and we hear some reflections on the word. And then we are moved to respond through the prayers, through the giving of our gifts. And then we're literally kicked outdoors again to go into the world where the main event is always happening. But there are other doors that we walk through in our lives. Think of all the doors that you've been through: birth, puberty, graduation, falling in love, your first job, getting married, having a child, or maybe your second, third child, fourth child, getting your second job, leaving the old job, entering a new job. Retirement is a door. Death is a door. Empty nest is a door. Divorce is a door. Getting a diagnosis is being led through a door. Being a survivor of something like cancer is going through a door. And the ultimate door that we all go through at some point is death. Doors signify change, sometimes significant change, a movement from one season or one stage or one point in our life to an entirely different season, different stage. And when we walk through a door, we leave something familiar behind and we enter into something that is unfamiliar, yet to be known, yet to be discovered. Some doors we're banging on for years before they open. Other doors we move through gracefully, easily. Other doors, it's almost like life forces us through it, and we go through that door kicking and screaming. The stages of life, the seasons of life are like doors. In the fall, we reflected on the stages of faith. Each stage opens into another door. Simplicity, complexity, perplexity, and harmony. Maybe you can remember the doors that led you from one stage to the next. If you've been through grief, you know the stages of grief. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And it's not like we just go through these doors once. We often go again and again through the same doors, the way that we come through the same seasons, which are also doors: spring, summer, fall, winter, doors that continue on and on through our lives. Jesus says today, I am the door. And I want to take a step back because the context here is so critical. I want to look at John chapter 9 because we can't understand what he's talking about here without understanding what just has happened in the gospel. You see, chapter 10 follows chapter 9 where Jesus heals the blind beggar, restores his sight, restores him to the community, this man who's been ostracized and marginalized. Jesus heals him, and what day does he do it? The day that Jesus does almost all of his healings, on the Sabbath day, the one day where the Pharisees could say, you're breaking the law, Jesus. So that has happened. And one way to understand what has happened is that Jesus, with each person in this, or each group in this story, he's inviting them to go through a door. He's inviting the blind beggar through a door. He rubs clay paste on this man who can't see. And then this man who's been marginalized, what does Jesus do? He sends him back into the community, to the communal bath, to wash his eyes. And when he washes his eyes, his sight is restored. And when people ask him what happened, he said, I have no idea. All I know is this man is Jesus. And all I know is I was blind, but now I see. All I know is he led me through a door. Jesus is also inviting the disciples through a door. They are stuck behind a theological door. They see this blind beggar and they start asking, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus says, no, that's not how it works. You're asking the wrong question. There's no cause and effect here. There's nobody to blame. Look instead for what God can do and will do with those who are aligned with God's will. You see, he's inviting the disciples through the door. It's not clear whether they walk through it, but the invitation is there. And less successfully, Jesus is offering the Pharisees, the religious authorities, he's inviting them to go through the door. Now, what are they hung up on? They're hung up on the fact that this rabbi would heal on the Sabbath day, the day of rest, the day when no one should work. They're frustrated. They're angry that Jesus would do this. And what does Jesus say to them? He says, I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who do see may become blind. He's inviting them through a door, but they don't want to go. Their response to Jesus is, are you saying we're blind? His point's already been made. But what are they blind to? What were the Pharisees blind to that Jesus wasn't? What is it that Jesus wanted them to see about how they might be a door for the religious people, for the people that they served? To answer this question, we look again at the context of the ancient Near East, particularly the practice of shepherding. When it was becoming night, the shepherd would gather all the sheep from the hills and gather them into large pens, which were these 5-foot stone walls that the sheep would go in. And on top of those walls were briars or thorny branches, their version of barbed wires and broken bottles, to keep the predators from jumping the wall and attacking the sheep. Now, the doorway of this wall was about 2 feet. And guess what material they used for the door? You think they used wood or linen or stone? There was no door. The shepherd was the door. The shepherd was the door. The shepherd would sleep in front of that 2-foot opening with a fire and his rod and staff ready to ward off any attackers who tried to come. He was the door. And in the text in chapter 10, what John is trying to do, I believe, is he's trying to contrast 2 different understandings of what it means to be a door. There's the Pharisee way and there's the Jesus way. The Pharisees are like the gatekeepers, right? They are the ones who see their role as protecting the boundaries, keeping their adherents in tight boxes, imposing strict rules, managing sin. That's what they feel is their calling. And at their best, they keep things simple for people, which can be helpful. But at their worst, they're controlling and they're trying to keep power over the people, particularly the most vulnerable. And they have a clear understanding of who's on the inside and who's on the outside, and the blind beggar, you better believe, is not on the inside. But Jesus' role is very different. He sees things differently. He refuses to put his followers in boxes. He refuses to impose strict wills upon him. He refuses to be a sin manager. He becomes a grace giver, not attempting to control people, but empowering them, giving them the freedom to come and go. And he responds to the blind beggar by inviting him back into the heart of the community, even as he heals him of an earthly affliction. Jesus makes this contrast clearer in the words that we heard today, and let me read them again from the Message translation this time. I am the door for the sheep. All those others are up to no good, sheep rustlers, every one of them, but the sheep didn't listen to them. I am the door. Anyone who goes through me will be cared for, will freely go in and freely go out and find pasture. A thief is only there to steal and kill and destroy. I came so that they can have real and eternal life, better life than they ever dreamed of. So the question for us today is, what kind of door are we going to be here at Westside? Will we model ourselves after the Pharisees, or will we model ourselves after Jesus? Will we focus on rules and regulations, or will we focus primarily on grace and mercy? Will we try to control people through guilt and shame, or will we empower them through the example of humility and love? Will we create a culture of insiders and outsiders, or will we continue to extend the circle of belonging? Will we be faithful to the new reformation that has already begun in the mainline church that will be centuries in the making? Will we walk through the new door that we're being offered and find the way by walking together? Will we let go of what is dying and give it a proper burial? And will we midwife that which is new, that which is desiring to be born? Will we stay behind closed doors, or will we go out of doors, which includes online? A new way of being outside in the world. Will we follow in the footsteps of one of the great founders, reformers, who ironically enough nailed his vision to the front door of a church in Germany? Will we, like Luther, love the church enough to critique it and try to make it more deeply reflect the heart of Jesus? Will we not only lament the way that religious leaders of our time exploit the blind beggars of our day, but will we do more than lament? will we do something about it? Help create an alternative vision of what a community of faith might be, one rooted in humility and love in the name of Jesus. That's the question that I've been asking of myself, and I've been thinking about it for you. And here's what I came to this week. I realize you have been on this journey for a while now. Think about it. Isn't it interesting? When you were forced through a door by circumstances beyond your control and you needed to rebuild this church, what was the material that you used? What material did you use to build your front door? What material did you use to build the chapel? What material that's unusual for most sanctuaries did you use to build this sanctuary that we are in today? And long before most mainline churches ever did this, isn't it interesting that you started live streaming, started to bring the message outside of these walls, beyond the building itself? And isn't it interesting? Of all the words that you could have written above the entrance to the sanctuary, all the words, there's lots of them in the Bible. You chose the words of a prophet, a reformer, somebody who loved his faith community enough to critique it and to energize it towards a positive vision. Do you know the words that you wrote over your sanctuary? My house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples. Isn't that interesting? My house shall be a house of prayer for all peoples. You see, I think Westside can be a door. I think Westside can be a door for people who have been on the outside looking in, wondering, would a faith community accept me with all the questions and all the struggles and all the uncertainty and all the pain that I bring? I think we can be a door for them. I think we can be a door for people who have felt excluded in another faith community because they don't fit into that tight box that the religious leader told them they must fit in. I wonder whether we can be a door for them. I wonder whether we can be a door for people who are tired of a message that only speaks to the head, or only speaks to the heart, or only speaks to the body and to action. And I wonder whether we can be a door for people longing for a message that speaks to the whole self, for the whole of life. I wonder whether we can be a door for people who are looking for a faith community not rooted in guilt and shame, but rooted in mercy and grace. I wonder whether we could be a door for them. I wonder if we could be a door for people longing again to see Jesus for who he really is. A community longing to live into the example of humility and love. I wonder if we could be a door for people like that. Last night, Westside walked through a door. Saturday night, Westside. We could be starting a tradition here. The Westside Concert Series, which has given the community wonderful concerts for many years, has primarily lived in the classical sacred music genre. But last night, something different happened here. We had two Irish lads standing up here with a wonderful banter between the two of them, playing two guitars, singing together harmoniously in a way that two brothers can and almost no one else. And they led us in worship on Saturday night. As I was sitting there watching them and listening to them, and watching them just invite us to be attentive to the Spirit in our midst, I was moved by these words, which I'll close with. Michal wrote this poem called Sanctuary. And he was inspired by it when he was walking in the woods and he came upon this little wooden chapel, and he walked in and he had an encounter with God in the presence of that place. He brought those words alive for people like you who are sitting here or worshiping here in this very space. And these are the words he said. He said, having descended into silence, I face a wooden structure. The sanctuary breathes before me, so I enter with rain on my skin. Completely empty, it welcomes the emptiness in me. Called to prayer, the easy prayer of simple breathing. This is how a church should be. The joining of warm wood together, making walls invisible. Making walls invisible. This is how a church should be, making walls invisible. Calling us to join in, not leave behind the life outside the door. Calling us to join in, not leave behind the life outside the door. A church vulnerable to fire. A church vulnerable to fire and water. A prayer vessel floating in the forest, mesmerized by amber tree lines ringing around me. I knew courageous prayers are said in places like this with wood, not stone, listening. I knew utter joy sweeps through places like these. A shelter, not an escape, a shelter. A shelter, unfettered by damp rock and twisted metal, hidden behind stained glass, lead lined, but a living, breathing, wild church for wild prayers. And though the air is still, a silent gale rose through this singing space. A silent gale rose through this singing. Can't you hear the song? Singing space. This silent cathedral among the moss, my skin thirsts again for rain. My soul a falling acorn, a hazelnut floating. Grant yourself refuge here. Grant yourself refuge here. Grasp these sacred seconds and call your soul your own.